The father's cruel choice of sun was sliding down the sky. When Nuru sat at the edge of his clay house, his face carved with shadows that made him look older than his years. The village children were still playing by the river bank, their laughter rising with the wind, but none of that reached him. His heart had been hollow for years, ever since the day his wife, Sana, died giving birth to their twin daughters. He had once loved Sana more than life itself. She was the kind of woman who lit up the dark corners of a room with only her smile. She sang when she ground millet, and even the birds seemed to pause when her voice floated out into the morning. But when her life ended in the pain of childbirth, Nuru's love turned to stone. He did not blame fate, nor the spirits, nor the ancestors. No, he blamed the two tiny babies who came crying into the world, wailing as if announcing their crime. The twins, Adia and Kiyomi, grew beneath that heavy cloud. Nuru fed them, yes, but without tenderness. He clothed them, but with coldness in his eyes. He did not strike them, but his silence was sharper than any whip. Villagers whispered that he was a broken man, yet no one dared interfere. In those times, a father's word was law, and Nuru's heart was his own prison. As the girls grew, the differences between them became clear. Adia, the elder by minutes, carried a quiet strength. She was sharp-eyed, always scanning, always protecting her younger sister. Her hands were rough from gathering firewood, her back often sore from carrying water jars too heavy for her size. Yet her spirit burned like an ember, refusing to die. Kiyomi, the younger, was softer, gentler. She dreamed aloud, speaking of birds that carried secrets, of streams that whispered names when you bent low enough. She laughed even when no one laughed back. It was she who tried, again and again, to draw a smile from their father's stone face, only to be met with silence. For years they lived in this strange balance, two children clinging to one another for warmth, a father wrapped in shadows, and a village that looked away. One evening, when the sun bled red across the horizon and the cattle bells jingled faintly in the distance, Nuru sat with his head in his hands. He had been ill for weeks, though he hid it well. His back ached as if stones were piled upon it. His stomach twisted with unrest, and his dreams were haunted by Santa's face. She stood in the shadows of his sleep, silent, but her eyes accused him. And in those dreams, he always heard the crying of babies, the same cries that had filled the hut on the night Santa's life was lost. He would wake drenched in sweat, whispering, "Why did you leave me with them on that evening?" Something inside him broke completely. He told himself it was mercy, not cruelty. He convinced his mind that the spirits had cursed these children, and that if he returned them to the wild, perhaps the curse would end. They were born with death in their hands. He muttered into the dirt floor, "Let the earth reclaim what it never wanted." That night, as darkness spread across the savannah, Nuru waited until the girls fell asleep on their thin mat. The moonlight slanted through the cracks in the hut, brushing their faces with silver. He stared at them for a long while, his eyes unreadable. Adia had her arm curled protectively round Kiyomi, even in sleep. Their breathing was soft, like the rustle of grass, with steady hands. Nuru cut lengths of rope from the bundle near the wall. He tied their wrists gently, almost carefully, as though afraid to wake them. When Adia stirred, he whispered, "SHH, only a dream." He carried them out one by one, their thin bodies light in his arms. The air was cool, filled with the cries of distant night birds. No one saw him leave. No one asked questions. Father sometimes walked the night when grief pressed too hard, and Nuru had always been a silent man. He walked deep into the wilderness, past the millet fields, past the river where frogs sang, past the termite mounds that glowed faintly under moonlight. His steps were heavy, but his face remained hard. The girls stirred now and then, murmuring in their sleep, but they did not fully wake. At last, he reached a lonely baobab tree, thick and crooked, its trunk split like an old scar. The land around it was dry, scattered with thorny bushes and the bleached bones of animals. Hyenas often prowled near here. Even lions were said to pass under this tree at night. Nuru placed the girls at the base of the trunk and tied them to it with a rope. Adia woke first, her eyes wide with confusion. "Father, where are we? Why are we here?" she whispered. He did not answer. His jaw clenched. Kiyomi stirred next, her small voice trembling. "Baba, it's cold." Nuru stood over them, his shadow long and crooked under the moon. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "I return you to the earth. May it take back what should not have lived." The words hung in the air like smoke. Adia struggled against the ropes, her skin scraping against the rough fibers. "Father, please, we did nothing wrong." But Nuru had already turned away. His footsteps faded into the distance. Swallowed by the grass, the sisters were alone. The wilderness was alive with sound. Crickets shrieked. An owl hooted from the twisted branches above. In the distance, the first howl of a hyena echoed, chilling the night air. Adia's heart thundered. In her chest, she pressed closer to her sister, trying to shield her with her body. "Don't be afraid, Keone," she whispered, though her own voice shook. Keone began to cry softly. "Why, Adia? Why does Baba hate us?" Adia had no answer. Her throat tightened, until words refused to come. All she could do was pull against the ropes until her wrists burned raw. The fibers cut into her skin, but the knots would not give. The air grew heavier, carrying the smell of decay. A sheep moved in the tall grass low to the ground, gliding with patience. Then the eyes glowed yellow in the moonlight. A hyena. The creature stopped a short distance away, its head tilted, its jaws slightly open. It made no rush, no sound beyond the soft crunch of its steps. Hyenas were hunters of patience. They waited for weakness. Adia swallowed her terror and leaned forward. "As much as the ropes allowed, stay behind me, Keone." Her sister's small fingers clung desperately to her side. The hyena circled once, twice, then stopped again, watching. Its ears twitched at every sound. Another howl rose in the distance, answered by a chorus. The pack was near. Keone whimpered. "Adia, they'll eat us." "No," Adia said fiercely, though her lips trembled. "Not tonight. Not while I breathe." She tried again to loosen the ropes, twisting her arms until the bark-braided fibers scraped skin from her wrists. Pain shot up her arms, but still she fought. The night seemed endless, each sound a new terror. Every crack of branches felt like claws approaching, every gust of wind like a ghostly hand. The girl's breaths came fast, shallow, filled with fear, and then just when the hyena crept a step closer, a new sound drifted through the night. A voice. It was faint, like a song carried on the wind. Low, steady, filled with age. It did not sound like a predator, nor like any villager. It was a human voice, singing words the girls did not understand. The hyena's ears twitched. Its gaze shifted, uneasy. After a moment, it slunk back into the grass, its eyes vanishing in the dark. Adia froze, holding her breath. Keone's tears slowed as she whispered, "Did you hear it, sister? Someone is coming." From beyond the thorn bushes, footsteps approached, bare feet pressing the earth with care. Like they belonged to the land itself, the song grew clearer, a chant old and deep, like something older than memory. Adia's heart pounded, torn between fear and hope. Who could be wandering here in this cursed hour? And then, through the darkness, a figure appeared, an old man with a crooked staff, his hair white as river foam, his tunic ragged but clean. His eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, not with hunger, but with warmth. He looked at the two bound girls and sighed, as though he had been expecting them all along. That night, under the ancient baobab tree, fate shifted. The daughters abandoned to death had been found, but by whom and for what reason neither Adia nor Keone yet knew. The stranger in the shadows of the wind that night seemed different. It moved not like a playful breeze, but like a messenger carrying whispers. The old man, Sefu, walked slowly through the tall grass, his bare feet hardly making a sound. He was a man who had lived so long with the earth that his steps seemed to belong to it. The moon's pale light revealed his face, lined like dry river beds, his eyes deep and knowing, his beard tangled like the roots of an old tree. He leaned on a crooked staff, carved with marks that told stories only he remembered. Most people, in villages far and near, had heard his name in whispers. Sefu, the man who listens to the ground. They said he knew when sickness was coming by the way the wind shifted. They said he could make a fever break with the smoke of crushed leaves. Some called him blessed, some called him cursed, but all agreed he was not like other men. That night he had not planned to walk this far. His small shelter lay near a river where reeds grew thick, where he gathered herbs in the evenings. But something had pressed heavy on his chest at sunset, a feeling he could not ignore. It was as if the earth itself had cried out, pulling him into the wilderness. He followed the feeling with patience, humming an old chant his grandmother had once sung to him when he was a child. And as he walked, he heard it, the faint, desperate sob of children. At first he thought it was only his memory playing tricks, but then he pressed his ear to the ground. Yes, the soil trembled with fear, the way it always did when young lives were at risk. Under the baobab tree, Adia and Keone clung to each other. Their wrists burned from the ropes, their faces streaked with tears. Adia had grown silent, her voice hoarse from begging. Keone had nearly fainted with fear. The hyenas had not gone far. Their laughter still echoed from the grasslands, waiting, waiting. Then through the shadows came the figure. At first, Adia thought it must be a spirit. His form moved slowly, as if he was not bound by the weight of flesh. His song rose low and steady, each word foreign but strangely calming. Even the night sound seemed to hush when his voice touched the air. "Who are you?" Adia's voice was cracked, sharp with fear. "Stay away." The old man stopped a few steps away. He leaned on his staff, his eyes resting on them with gentleness. "Little ones," he said softly, his voice deep like a drum, but tender like water. "You are warm. That means the earth has not released you yet." Adia's chest tightened. The words made no sense to her, yet something about them felt true. Keone, still trembling, whispered, "Is he a ghost, Adia?" Sefu knelt slowly, his knees sinking into the dry soil. He did not rush, did not frighten. He set down a leather pouch tied at his waist and drew out a small bundle of dried leaves. He crumbled them in his palm and blew gently. A sweet, bitter smoke drifted into the air. Curling like soft hands, the smell pushed back the stench of fear, even masking the scent that had drawn the hyenas. "No ghosts tonight," Sefu said. "Only an old man who walks where the earth calls him." He reached into his pouch again and brought out a bone knife. The moonlight caught its sharp edge. Adia stiffened, pulling Keone closer. "Don't touch us," she cried. Sefu met her eyes, calm as still water. "This knife cuts only rope, never skin." He raised the blade and, with a practiced motion, sliced through the bindings around their wrists. The ropes fell like dead snakes at their feet. The girls gasped, rubbing their sore arms. Adia's skin was raw, marked with red grooves, but she barely noticed. For the first time since their father abandoned them, she could move freely. Keone leaned into Sefu's arm without hesitation. As though her heart recognized safety, her mind did not yet trust. She buried her face against his chest and sobbed. The old man wrapped his arm gently round her. Adia stood stiffly, torn between mistrust and relief. Why did you come?" Sefu looked up at the sky as though reading the stars. "Because the ground whispered your cries, because the wind would not rest until I followed, because no child should be left to the teeth of the night." The hyenas howled again, closer this time. Their laughter rattled through the air, sharp and cruel. Sefu's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to the girls. "It is not safe here," he said. He lifted Keone with surprising strength for his age, setting her against his shoulder. She clung to him like a bird rescued from a snare. He held out his other hand to Adia. She hesitated. Her father's face flashed in her mind, his hard eyes, his cruel words. She had trusted blood and been betrayed. How could she trust a stranger? Yet when she looked into Sefu's eyes, she saw no judgment, no anger, no secrets, only truth. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. The old man rose, his staff tapping against the earth in rhythm with his steps. Together they walked into the grasslands, guided by a path that seemed invisible. Behind them, the hyenas emerged at last, their eyes gleaming, their jaws wide. They sniffed the air, but the smoke of Sefu's herbs clung to the clearing, confusing their senses. They circled the baobab tree, whining, then slunk away, denied their prey. The journey to Sefu's shelter was long. The night was deep, the stars watching silently overhead. Adia stumbled often, her legs weak from fear and exhaustion, but Sefu's hand steadied her each time. He never scolded, never hurried. His presence was calm, like a river flowing without end. At last they reached the edge of a hidden river bend. There, half hidden by reeds and twisted trees, stood a small hut made of clay, vines, and branches. Around it, herbs hung in bundles. Clay pots lined the ground, and a low fire still smoldered in the hearth. "This is my place," Sefu said. "No harm crosses here. The spirits know it well." He set Keone gently on a straw mat inside and covered her with a cloth woven from goat hair. The girl's tears slowed, her eyes fluttering shut at last. Adia remained standing, hugging her, arms to her chest. Her eyes darted around, wary. "You can rest," Sefu told her. "The night will not bite you here." But Adia shook her head. "Why should we trust you? Why do you care?" Sefu smiled faintly. He poured water from a gourd into a wooden cup and set it before her. "Because once Long ago, I too was a child left behind, and because the earth cries when children suffer, that is reason enough." Adia stared at him, her heart pounding. Slowly, she took the cup and drank. The water was cool, tasting faintly of roots and ash, but it washed the dust from her throat. She sank onto the mat beside her sister, her body too weary to resist any more. Her eyes fluttered, but she forced them open, afraid that sleep meant danger. Sefu placed a bundle of herbs on the fire. A sweet smoke filled the hut, wrapping the air in comfort. "Sleep, little ones," he murmured. "You are safe for now." That night, Adia dreamed. She saw her mother's face soft, smiling, her hands reaching out. She saw fields of tall grass bending in the wind, and a voice whispering, "Live, my daughters, live." When she woke in the dim glow of dawn, Sefu was still sitting by the fire, his staff across his lap, his eyes half closed but watchful. He had not slept at all, and in that moment, for the first time since the rope burned her wrists, Adia believed that maybe, just maybe, she and Keone had not been abandoned to death after all. Healing in the hut's first light of dawn filtered through the cracks in Sefu's hut, painting the clay walls with pale gold. Outside, the river gurgled quietly, carrying the smell of wet earth and reeds. Birds had begun their morning songs, filling the air with sounds of life that contrasted sharply with the silence that still lingered in Adia's heart. Adia stirred awake on the straw mat, her body stiff and sore. Beside her, Keone still slept deeply, her small hand curled into the fabric of the goat hair cloth. For a moment, Adia forgot where they were. The night before rushed back like a wave the ropes. The hyenas, their father's hard face, her chest, tightened. But then she turned her eyes and saw the old man. Sefu was sitting by the fire pit, cross-legged, crushing dry leaves with his knotted fingers. His staff leaned beside him, and smoke from the embers curled slowly into the air. His eyes were half closed, but he was not asleep. His breathing was steady, his presence calm, like a rock in the middle of a storm. Adia pulled her knees to her chest and whispered, "Why did you help us?" Sefu did not answer immediately. He sprinkled the crushed leaves into a clay pot of water heating over the fire. A sweet, bitter aroma rose, filling the hut. Only then did he speak. "The earth spoke your pain," he said simply, "and the earth has never lied to me." Adia frowned. She did not understand. She wanted to ask more, but her throat was dry. Sefu noticed. He lifted the pot and poured the warm herbal water into a carved wooden cup. He handed it to her. "Drink. It will clean the fear from your stomach." Adia sniffed the cup. The smell was sharp, almost unpleased. And she hesitated. But Keone stirred beside her, whispering, "Adia, water." Without thinking, Adia lifted the cup to Keone's lips first. Her sister sipped, then sighed, sinking back into sleep. Only then did Adia drink herself. The liquid was bitter, but it spread warm through her chest. The days that followed moved slowly, like the river outside, calm but purposeful. Sefu tended to their wounds with patience. He washed their rope-burned wrists with cool water mixed with ground bark. He wrapped their ankles with strips of cloth soaked in oil pressed from seeds. He gave them soups of roots and herbs, food that tasted strange but gave them strength. Keone recovered quickly. Within days, she was laughing again, chasing the small birds that came to pick crumbs near the hut. Her eyes shone with curiosity, and she followed Sefu everywhere, asking questions. "What is this leaf? Why does it smell like rain? What are you grinding, Babu?" Sefu would smile faintly in answer. "This leaf lowers the fire in the body when fever comes. This root calms a heart that shakes to fast. This bark, when burned, chases bad spirits from a house." Keone listened with wide eyes, soaking every word like a thirsty plant. Adia, however, was different. She ate quietly, drank when told, and sat apart, her gaze distant. Anger burned in her belly. At night she lay awake, staring at the clay roof, replaying the image of her father tying the rope, of his back walking away without looking once. Sometimes she clenched her fists so tight that her nails cut her palms. Why, she asked herself again and again. What crime did we commit? Sefu noticed. One evening, while Keone slept curled in a ball, he sat beside Adia at the doorway. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of wildflowers from the fields. The stars burned brightly overhead. "You carry a stone in your chest," Sefu said softly. Adia turned to him, startled. "What do you mean?" "Anger," Sefu replied, "heavy, sharp. You carry it, and it cuts only you." Adia's eyes filled, but she refused to let tears fall. He left us to die, our own father. Should I forgive that? Sefu shook his head. No. Forgiveness is not asked of you now, but if you let hatred grow, it will eat you before the hyenas ever could. Adia looked down at her hands. For the first time, someone had spoken the truth she was afraid to admit. In the mornings, Sefu began to teach them. He took them into the forest behind the hut, showing them plants hidden beneath roots, herbs growing in shade. This one, he said, pointing to a small green sprout with white flowers, is for wounds. Crush it, it stops bleeding. He guided their hands as they picked leaves, teaching them to smell, to feel textures. The earth gives both poison and medicine. You must learn the difference. Healing is not in the plant alone. It is in how to use it. Kiyomi giggled when she accidentally sneezed from sniffing a strong herb. Adia, though quiet, listened carefully. She wanted to know. She wanted to remember. She wanted to make use of every root, every leaf, because she had already learned that life could vanish in a single night. By midday, Sefu would return with them to the hut, and they would sit around the fire as he told stories. He spoke of rivers that carried memory, of mountains that hid the voices of ancestors, of healers who once walked before him. Adia listened in silence, but in her heart, she felt something new. She felt the stories pressing into her anger, softening it, giving her another way to hold her pain. Still, the nights were hardest. Adia's dreams came fierce and heavy. She saw fire swallowing the village. Her father's face twisted in shadows. She woke sweating, clutching Kiyomi close. Sefu, sitting awake as always, would only say, "Dreams are rivers. They carry what your heart cannot hold awake. Do not fear them. Watch them." One night, Adia asked, "Did your father leave you too?" Sefu looked into the fire for a long time before answering, "No, but I lost my child. Long ago, I wandered the land with grief until the earth taught me to heal instead of to hate. That is why I walk where the ground calls." Adia stared at him. She felt a thread connect them, a thin, fragile string of understanding. By the end of the week, the girls had changed. Their cheeks had color again. Their bodies no longer shook with hunger. Kiyomi hummed songs as she braided grass into small mats. Adia carried baskets of herbs back to the hut, her steps steadier each day. But the wound in their hearts had not vanished. It lingered, quiet but deep. Sefu knew this. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with fire, he placed the seed necklaces in their hands. The seeds were red and black, polished smooth. "Wear these," he said. "They remind you that you are not shadows. You are alive. The world must see that." Adia touched the beads, feeling their weight. Kiyomi slipped hers over her neck with delight. And for the first time since the baobab tree, Adia allowed herself to smile, faint and small, but real. That night, as the girls lay side by side, the fire crackling softly, Sefu whispered to the wind. Outside his hut, they were meant to be swallowed by death, he murmured. But the earth has other plans. The wind answered with a sigh through the reeds, as though agreeing. The weight of dreams days in Sefu's hut had started to blur together. Morning came with the chatter of birds and the smell of crushed herbs. Afternoon carried the sound of the river flowing, steady and calm. Evening always ended with firelight, dancing on the clay walls, shadows swaying like old spirits listening to his chants. For Kiyomi, the hut felt like a nest. She laughed easily now, plaited grass into tiny mats, and followed Sefu around like a shadow. She had begun to call him Babu, grandfather, as if the earth itself had gifted her another parent. But for Adia, the weight of something heavier remained. She worked hard, she listened carefully, but inside her heart, storms still gathered. At night, when Kiyomi's breathing grew soft and Sefu hummed old songs by the fire, Adia's dreams became a battlefield. The dreams began at night. She dreamed of fire. The village was burning, smoke twisting high into the sky. Clay huts cracked. In the heat, chickens scattered, and dogs howled in terror. In the middle of the flames stood her father, Nuru, his face pale, his eyes wild. He held a rope in his hands, the same rope he had used to tie them under the baobab tree. But in the dream, it was not her wrist he bound. It was his own, the rope, circling his arms, pulling him into the fire. He shouted something she could not hear, his voice lost in the crackle of flames. Adia jolted awake, sweat pouring down her face. The hut was still, only the quiet crackle of embers filling the silence. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to steady her breath. Beside her, Keone slept peacefully, her small hand clutching the seed necklace Sephu had given. Adia could not close her eyes again. She sat awake until dawn, her mind heavy with the dream's images. The following night, the dream returned but different. This time, she was standing by the river. The water was dark, moving slowly, and in it she saw her reflection. Yet the face staring back was not her own. It was her mother's. Santa's eyes looked at her, kind but filled with sorrow. Her lips moved, whispering words Adia could not understand. The river carried the voice away before Adia could grasp it. She woke again in tears. Sephu's wisdom, the third night of broken sleep, Adia's exhaustion showed. Her steps were heavy, her eyes red-rimmed. Sephu noticed. After the evening meal of porridge and wild greens, he sat beside her near the fire. "You walk in your dreams more than you walk in the day," he said. Adia lowered her head. "I see things I cannot explain. Fire, rope, my mother's face, my father's shadow. It feels real, but I don't understand." Sephu stirred the embers with his staff, sparks rising like fireflies. "Dreams are not lies, child. They are rivers. They carry what your heart cannot hold awake. Sometimes they carry warnings. Sometimes they carry healing. The trick is to listen, not to run." Adia clenched her fists. "But why me? Why not Keone? She sleeps like a bird, light and free. Why must I carry all this?" Sephu looked at her with steady eyes. "Because you are the older one, the first seed. Some trees grow heavy fruit, while others bloom with flowers. Each has its weight. Yours is fire, hers is song." Adia swallowed hard. She wanted to argue, but the words lodged in her throat. Keone, who had been listening quietly, leaned against her sister's arm. "Adia, maybe Mama is speaking to you through the dreams. Maybe she wants you to know something." Adia turned to her, tears pricking her eyes. "And what if she wants me to forgive him? I can't, Keone, I can't." Sephu did not interrupt. He let silence stretch, the kind of silence that heals more than words. Finally, he said, "Forgiveness is not a gift to the one who harmed. It is a seed planted in your own chest, so the anger does not eat you alive. You may not be ready now, but the earth is patient. It will wait." The lessons deepened next days. Sephu began to teach them more than herbs. He showed them how to listen to the wind. "The wind carries messages," he explained, closing his eyes as the breeze passed through the reeds. "If it comes warm when the sky is dark, it warns of sickness. If it comes cold in the heat, it brings change. Listen with your skin, not just your ears." He taught them how to lay their palms against the ground to feel vibrations. The earth hums when danger approaches. Animals know it. You must learn to. He even taught them chants, old songs in a language neither girl fully understood. "These words are older than villages," he said. "When you sing them, spirits know you are not walking alone." Keone took to the lessons with wonder. She sang the chants softly as she gathered herbs, her high voice weaving with the bird songs. Adia learned quietly, absorbing each word, each practice, storing them like weapons for an unseen battle. The call to return in evening. As the sky turned the color of ripe mangoes, Adia sat outside the hut, staring across the river. Her hands trembled on her knees. She felt a pull in her chest, sharp and undeniable, as if the air itself was tugging her. Keone came to sit beside her. "You're thinking of the village again, aren't you?" Adia nodded slowly. "I see it in my dreams. I feel it here." She touched her chest, like a rope still tied to me. "No matter how far we are, it pulls me back." Keone shivered. "Do you want to go back to him?" Adia shook her head. "Not to him, to the truth. Something there is unfinished, something waiting." When they told Sephu, he sat silently for a long time, his eyes closed. Finally, he said, "The earth does not pull without reason. If your dreams burn with fire, it means something is rotting that must be cleansed. But hear me if you return. Do not carry revenge in your hands. Carry water. Carry healing. Otherwise, you will only feed the fire." Adia's jaw tightened. "And if the people turn away? If they see us and call us cursed?" Sephu's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then you show them you are not curses, but answers. Life refused to let you die. That means you carry medicine, not poison." Keone reached for her sister's hand. "If you go, I go too. We were left together. We will return together." Adia squeezed her hand. For the first time since their father abandoned them, she felt something grow inside her chest. It was not hatred, not even anger. It was resolve, the preparation over the next few days. Sephu prepared them. He taught them which herbs to carry, a pouch of dried basil leaves to purify spaces, a root that released a sweet smoke to chase away evil, small gourds of water taken from the river's purest bend. He made necklaces of red and black seeds for protection, pressing them into the girls' palms. Wear these. They tell the spirits you belong to the living, not to the dead. He drew a symbol with charcoal inside their tunics, an old mark that meant child of healing. The night before they were to leave, the three of them sat in a circle around the fire. Sephu burned tamarind leaves, the smoke rising like a bridge between worlds. He sprinkled ash on their feet and said, "You were left to die, but life refused. Now you return not as victims, but as healers. Remember, water quenches fire. Carry water." Adia did not cry. Keone did not either. Pain was no longer new. Fear had become familiar. But now, for the first time, purpose sat with them like a fourth presence in the hut. The departure when dawn broke, the sky was painted red and gold, as if the heavens themselves watched. The girls stood tall, their seed necklaces gleaming, their bundles of herbs and water strapped across their shoulders. Sephu placed his hands on their heads. His voice was soft but firm. "Walk straight. Do not look back. Let the earth guide your steps. And remember, healing is greater than hate." The sisters nodded. With steady hearts, they began their journey toward the village, the place where pain had been born, and where healing must now return down from behind them. Sephu lifted his staff and whispered into the wind, "Carry them, old earth, protect them. Ancestors, let the fire in their dreams burn into light." Now ash, the wind rose gently, brushing the girls' faces as if answering his prayer, and so they walked on, to figures against the rising sun, carrying not weapons, but leaves and water seeds, of healing in a land waiting for truth. Returned to the village. The sun rose slowly that morning, a pale orange disk pushing through the mist. It seemed uncertain, as though the sky itself hesitated to light what was about to happen. The earth was still, the roosters crowed at odd hours, and the dogs in the village paced restlessly, whining without reason. Even the elders, who usually woke with calm faces, sat on their porches with their brows furrowed, whispering that the air felt different. At the far edge of the path, where the thorn bushes parted into the village road, two figures appeared. The first was Adia, walking tall, her steps steady. She carried a small basket covered with a white cloth. Around her neck hung the red and black seed necklace Sephu had given her, its colors bright against her dark tunic. Beside her was Keone, smaller, but no less determined. She carried a bundle of herbs tied with vine, her eyes shining with quiet courage. Her hair was neatly braided, her shoulders squared. The villagers began to notice. Women carrying water jars paused, their feet rooted in the dust. Children playing by the wells stopped mid-laugh, staring. Men returning from the fields froze in their tracks, their hosts slung across their backs like forgotten burdens. Whispers spread like dry grass catching fire. "Who are they? Strangers?" "No. Look closer. It cannot be Adia." And Keone did not stop. They walked straight into the heart of the village square, their faces calm, their steps measured. Their silence was louder than any shout, drawing more people from their huts until a crowd gathered. The recognition under the shade of the great cashew tree sat Mama Jalia, the blind elder woman who was always respected for her wisdom. She had lost her sight many years ago, but her other senses were sharp as the edge of a blade. People often said she could see with her soul when the murmur of the crowd reached her ears. She rose slowly to her feet, leaning on her stick. "Bring them closer," she said, her voice raspy but firm. The villagers parted like water. Letting Adia and Keone step forward, Mama Jalia reached out her trembling hands. Keone gently guided her palm to Adia's face. For a long moment, the old woman's fingers traced the girl's features, the curve of her jaw, the smoothness of her forehead, the trembling of her lips. The crowd held its breath. Then Mama Jalia whispered, her voice breaking, "These are not strangers. These are the daughters who walked with death and returned." Gasps rippled through the square. Women covered their mouths with their hands. An old man dropped his pipe. Children clutched their mother's skirts. Mama Jalia's blind eyes filled with tears as she raised her hands to the sky. "Adia, Keone, the earth refused to swallow you. The ancestors have carried you back." The square erupted in whispers, some fearful, some ashamed. "They're alive. But how were they not taken by spirits? Or left to die?" No one dared finish the sentence. the father's house across the square. In a dark clay house with shuttered windows, Nuru stirred on his mat. He had grown weak in the weeks since he abandoned his daughters. His body was thin, his skin ashen, and fevers gripped him like a curse. At night he cried out in his sleep, seeing visions of his wife, of ropes, of hyenas. By day he sat in silence, too weak to rise. That morning he heard the commotion outside, murmurs, gasps, the rising hum of voices. Slowly, with trembling legs, he dragged himself to the doorway. When he looked out, his eyes fell on the two figures standing in the center of the square. His breath caught, his knees buckled. His daughters alive. For a long moment he stared, his face drained of all color. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, with a broken cry, he stumbled forward. Adia, Kiyomi. He tried to walk toward them, but his legs gave way. He collapsed in the dust, clutching his chest, his tears mixing with the dirt. The crowd gasped, torn between pity and judgment. Adia's eyes met his. Her face remained calm, her jaw set. She did not move to help him. Kiyomi covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. Torn between love and pain, the silence in the square grew heavy. It was not the silence of fear, but of truth. Everyone knew now. Nuru had left his daughters to die, and yet here they stood, returned by hands stronger than hatred. The stillness of truth. No words were spoken by the sisters. They did not accuse. They did not cry out. Their silence was enough. Mama Jalia raised her stick and declared to the crowd, "Today the past stands in front of us. These children carry no curse. They carry truth. The earth herself has brought them back." The villagers bowed their heads, shame creeping into their hearts. Some women began to cry openly, their tears falling into the dust. The men shifted, uneasily, avoiding each other's eyes. Children hid behind their mothers. Sensing the weight of the moment, Nuru lay on the ground, trembling, his voice cracked and thin. "Forgive me, if there is still time. Forgive me." Adia did not answer. Kiyomi knelt briefly, placing her hand on the earth between them, as if saying, "We have returned. But we will not forget." The people of the village understood. That day, they saw not to broken girls, but to survivors standing taller than anyone else. The night of waiting, sisters were taken into the home of a kind widow, who offered them mats and food. But the village did not sleep that night. Fires burned in front of houses. Whispers floated through the air like restless spirits. Some spoke of curses. Others said the daughters were chosen by ancestors. But most knew the truth. It was not spirits who had taken them. It was their father who had betrayed them. And now the earth had brought them back as living witnesses. Inside her borrowed mat, Adia lay awake. Kiyomi slept beside her, clutching the herb bundle as though it were a doll. Adia stared at the ceiling, her chest heavy. She did not feel triumph. She did not feel vengeance. She felt the same weight as in her dreams, the fire, the rope, the unfinished story. Tomorrow, she knew, they would have to face their father, not in the dust of the square, but inside his house. The house that still smelled of neglect. The house where silence had once drowned them. For healing to begin, they would have to step into the very place where pain was born. Washing the past morning came heavy, like a drumbeat echoing in the sky. Clouds hung low. Though no rain fell, the village moved quietly, people stepping softly as though they feared to disturb what the day would bring. Chickens scratched silently in the dust. Even the dogs lay close to the doorways, their ears pinned back, sensing something sacred in the air. At the heart of it all, the clay house of Nuru stood still. Its walls were stained with time, its windows shut tight, its air heavy with sickness and guilt. It was the house that once rang with Santa's laughter, the same house that grew silent the day she died. Now it sat like a broken gourd, carrying the sour smell of regret. Inside, Nuru lay in his hammock. His body was thin, his skin damp with fever. His eyes stared at the roof, wide and restless. He had not slept since the day his daughters returned. Their faces haunted him, not accusing, not crying, but simply there, alive when he had wished them gone. The truth of it crushed him. He mumbled her name over and over. Sana, Sana. The Aprochadia and Kiyomi rose before dawn. They washed their faces at the old village well, the same well where their mother had once drawn water. The rope creaked, the bucket dipped, and when Adia lifted it, the water gleamed clear and cold, carrying the smell of stone and memory. Adia filled a small pitcher and covered it with the white cloth Sefu had given. Kiyomi arranged leaves on a mat, basil, lemon thyme, and a root that gave off a sharp sweet scent when pressed. Around their necks hung the seed necklaces, shining softly in the dim light. They did not speak as they prepared. Words were too small for what the day required. When they stepped onto the path, the villagers followed in silence. Women with jars paused their work. Children clung to their mothers. Men lowered their tools. One by one, they walked behind the sisters until a quiet crowd filled the square. No one had told them to gather. The earth itself seemed to have called them. Entering the house, the sisters stopped at the door of their father's house. The doorframe was cracked, though was swollen from years of neglect. The smell of dampness and fever leaked through the opening. Adia lifted the pitcher. With steady hands, she sprinkled water on the threshold. The drops hit the dust and spread, darkening it, making it smell of freshness instead of rot. Keone bent down and laid the herbs in a path from the doorway to the hammock. Basil, lemon, thyme leaves of cleansing. Together, they stepped inside. The air was heavy, stale with sickness. The walls bore stains where no one had cared to clean. The floor was scattered with dust, ashes, and broken memories. In the corner, Nuru lay in his hammock, his body trembling, his eyes wide and wet. When he saw them, his lips quivered. He tried to rise, but his strength failed. Adia, Keone. His voice was thin, rasping like dry leaves. Forgive me, if there is still time. The sisters did not answer. Adia lifted the pitcher, dipped the herbs into the water, and sprinkled the walls. Drops rolled down like tears, darkening the clay. She moved slowly, circling the room, murmuring the chants Sefu had taught. Water, quench fire. Life refused death. Earth keep memory, but cleanse the wound. Keone followed, scattering the fresh leaves across the floor. Their scent rose sharp and sweet, cutting through the staleness. When they reached the hammock, Adia stopped. She looked down at her father. His eyes begged. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. A single tear slid down his cheek, silent and heavy. Adia's hand shook as she dipped the herbs into the pitcher once more. She pressed them gently against his chest. The water spread across his shirt, soaking into his skin. Keone knelt at his feet and poured the last of the water over his ankles, washing the dust that clung to him. Nuru broke. His chest shook with sobs, the kind that come not from the throat, but from the soul. He wept like a child, gasping for air. His voice cracked. Forgive me, forgive me. The sisters did not speak forgiveness. Their act had already spoken. Louder than words, the silence of witness outside. The villagers pressed close to the doorway, watching in silence. No one interrupted. No one whispered. They understood that this was not a moment of accusation, but of truth. Mama Jalia, the blind elder, stepped forward, her hand brushing the doorframe. This house has carried death, she said, her voice strong despite her frail body. But today, it carries memory washed with water. Memory cleansed is not a curse. It becomes an altar. Her words settled over the crowd like a blessing. Women began to weep quietly. Men lowered their heads in respect. Children stared wide-eyed, sensing the weight of the moment. Inside, Adia and Keone stood tall, their shoulders straight. For the first time in years, they did not feel small. They did not feel abandoned. They felt rooted, like trees that had survived storms. The father's Chanjinuru did not die that day. The fever slowly broke, though his body remained weak. Something inside him had shattered completely, not his bones, but his pride. He no longer walked with his chin high or his shoulders squared. He spoke less, but when he did, his words were softer, almost fragile. He planted the lemon trees behind his house, watering them with his own hands. Some said he whispered as he planted, "May no child of mine ever taste bitterness again." The daughters did not return to live under his roof, not out of hatred, but because their paths had changed. They were no longer only children. They had become healers, carrying water, herbs, and chants across villages. The legacy Adia grew into a woman whose gaze was sharp but kind. People came from distant lands to seek her knowledge of roots. And leaves, Keone, with her gentle laughter, calmed crying children and brought peace to grieving mothers. Together, they became known not as orphans of cruelty, but as daughters of healing. Years later, when Sefu passed, the villagers found only his staff resting outside his hut. With a note carved into its wood, now the healing belongs to them. At the baobab tree, where the girls had once been tied, the villagers built a small altar of stones. Mothers tied cloth ribbons to its branches. Fathers left gourds of water. Children placed small toys. It became a place of prayer, not a fear, a reminder that even what was meant for death could become a wellspring of life. And when the wind blew through its twisted branches at night, some swore they heard the voices singing, one strong, one gentle, two sisters, forever bound not by ropes, but by survival, by healing, by love. Closing words that day. The village learned that silence can wound, but healing can come in unexpected hands. They learned that forgiveness does not erase scars, but it can make them sacred. And the sisters who were once left to die became living proof of a truth older than any man. What the earth refuses to take, it transforms into medicine.